Our next speaker is a leader in the Agile learning ecosystem. His students across the globe are captivated by his overarching knowledge and his ability to conduct it with ease. He has spent a good 30 years in practicing and leading teams in delivering business goals under different environments and has also assisted various companies with their process improvements and developmental capabilities. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for the very lively and charming Shane Hastie, Director, Agile Learning Program. He is going to be talking about embracing agility.
There we go. Agility is an imperative for the 21st century. If organizations are going to survive, if they're going to prosper, then agile is not an option. Agility is absolutely crucial. If we're going to achieve, disrupt, innovate, transform, then we need to have that agile mindset. And we'll explore, what do we really mean by a mindset? What are the new ways of thinking, the new ways of working that we have to bring to our environment? I was one of the authors of the IIBA white paper, Embrace Agility, and this talk pulls in some of those ideas. It also is going to talk somewhat about the state of business agility, drawing on the work from Evan Laybourne in the Business Agility Institute. We'll talk about the mindset. We'll talk about what does it mean to become a digital business. And then the really, really hard and important thing, it starts with you. What are the changes that you have to make in your philosophy, your way of working, in order to enable that agility that my premise, my assertion, my hypothesis is absolutely critical for success in the 21st century. So what do we mean by business agility? Just let people come in and settle in. The nimbleness, the ability to adapt quickly while empowering everyone associated with the brand. Renew itself, adapt, change quickly, succeed in what is a rapidly changing, ambiguous and turbulent environment. Now, at one level, the world has always been changing, ambiguous and turbulent. But the rate of change is something that has been accelerating in the last decades, and we certainly see it in the world around us today. So this is almost becoming a hackneyed term, VUCA. It actually comes out of the US military, looking at the state and how they have to deal with the world. But it does have a significant impact when we think about it in our organizational context. Volatility. The rate of change is fast and getting faster. Uncertainty. We don't know what's coming next. What is the future got in store for us? We saw some great videos in the previous session where talking about ways that Shell is trying to innovate. But are they innovating in the right direction? We don't actually know because there is so much uncertainty. The complexity we heard in the opening keynote, the need to go beyond value streams in the organization and think to our whole ecosystem. That is a lot harder from a conceptual level than breaking down silos within our organizations. which is the barest minimum starting point. And the ambiguity. What does it actually all mean? So these things are challenges that we face in our organizations today, in our departments, and in our lives. And if we're going to be successful in the 21st century, we have to have mechanisms to tackle them at an individual and an organizational and at a societal level. So my assertion is that we need to respond rapidly and have built right into the DNA of our organization. And the previous speaker was talking about the way that Shell is trying to integrate this design thinking and these approaches into and the customer experience and being adaptive, being responsive. More and more organizations today are recognizing the need for this, and we're looking for ways to bring it in. But it's hard because we talk about the mindset, the shift in the ways of thinking that is absolutely crucial. But what is the state? So Evan Labor and Sally Alata 2 weeks ago at the Agile 2019 conference, they gave a presentation on the Business Agility Report. Now this is the second annual report, and they've very kindly given me permission to use a few of their slides to talk about what is the current state of business agility through a survey that was done, and it's not a double-blind, statistically accurate sample. These are self-selected respondents to the sample, but that's a pretty good picture of what's going on. So business agility in 2019. The challenges to business agility, to bringing in this new way of working and thinking. It starts with leadership style. We want to empower people at the edge of the organization. We want to be able to respond quickly. But our leaders are struggling to let go of control. Change management. Again, mentioned first thing this morning in the opening keynote. One of the biggest challenges. We have to find ways to allow that change to be absorbed in the organization. Organizational culture. Now, leadership and culture are tightly intertwined. The agile mindset, adopting this way of thinking, and mindset has become almost a hackneyed term today. But when you distill it down, what we mean by mindset is your philosophy, your attitude, your way of thinking about something. It's a shorthand term, but unfortunately it's been used so much, it's becoming meaningless. But think of it as that philosophy way of thinking. Alignment, getting everyone pulling in the same direction. Sponsorship. Who's paying for this? Who's supporting these changes? Our customers don't like what we're doing. Silo structures. And we've known for decades that silo structures in our organizations get in the way. It's now become absolutely imperative that we find ways to overcome the silo-based thinking. And there are models, there are approaches that enable us to do that. And the transformation itself, it's a lovely term. You know, every organization must transform, and we see these images of caterpillars becoming butterflies all over the place. For a caterpillar to become a butterfly, its whole body dissolves and then grows back again. That transformation is traumatic, painful, and difficult to that organism. Well, if we're asking our organizations to change, we're going through that same level of pain and coming out at the other end, a completely different species, almost, a different beast. But we have to go through that transformational change. And it isn't easy. But what are the benefits? So these, again, are the self-reported benefits that organizations are getting from bringing in this business agility mindset. Increased revenue, pretty much every one of them. And the percentages are significant, but often very, very confidential. But they're high in increased revenue. Faster turnaround times, rapid response. We heard this morning about going from 4 months to 8 days. Improved relationships, that's internal and external. And greater transparency. So these are the top reported benefits of organizations that have made that transformation, that have gone through the dissolving and rebuilding of themselves. That is that transformation. Customer satisfaction, employee satisfaction, market success, collaboration, communication, ownership, accountability, adaptive leaders, better ways of working, and motivation. Everyone wants this, don't we? Every leader wants our organization to have happier customers, more engaged employees, and all of those other benefits. And we know that it's possible, but it's hard. An interesting figure from the survey was the perception levels. So they use these 5 levels from sitting to crawling to walking to running and to flying as the levels of fluency in Agile, in business agility. And they asked at the different levels of the organization, where are you at? Where is your business at? So at the C level, executives think we're doing okay. 5.4, we're walking towards running. Line of business division leaders are saying, yeah, no. We're lucky to be crawling. Managers, also, executives and managers, maybe they wear different sunshades or something. Individual contributors, 3.9. We're crawling, we might get towards walking at some point. And our external partners are looking at us and saying, you know what? You're crawling. You're almost walking, but you're still crawling. Why the levels, the different perceptions, I wonder? What are the lies we are telling ourselves? What are the stories that are not getting up to managers, that are not coming to the executive level? And how come these messages are being filtered? So that's the state of business agility. But let's talk and explore a little bit further about what do we mean by this mindset of agility. The term mindset came into common use with Carol Dweck's work on the fixed versus the growth mindset. And in the Agile space, we've grasped this. We've grabbed onto it and said, you know, we need a mindset of agility, which is very much the growth mindset, that I genuinely believe that I can change, I can learn, I can do better. When Carol Dweck did this research, she found that our mindset, this fixed versus flexible, fixed versus growth mindsets, are things that we actually learn at a very, very young age. And they are instilled in us, and they are expressed in our interactions with life in general, but also they become part of our, when we form groups, whether that's in organizations or in families or in towns, the general mindset of the members of that group become the mindset of the group. So we see organizations exhibiting that fixed mindset. This is what we can do, our box, these are our barriers, our borders. And changing that mindset is something that Carol Dweck said, yes, it is possible, but it's almost as painful as going from being a caterpillar to a butterfly. You have to really put in determined individual effort and conscious self-management to recognize when you're saying to yourself, no, I can't do that. And consciously step back and say, I can't do that yet. What do I need to learn to be able to do it in the future? And that's the essence of the growth mindset, is accepting that there is a yet when I can't do that. There is an opportunity to learn. Now, my wife is an artist, a very accomplished artist. So when I've looked at my own scratchings and done drawings, for many, many years I had a very, very fixed mindset. I am not an artist. I can't draw. And it took a very, very deliberate and conscious effort to say, I can't draw well yet. And I went and I did some learning. I did a graphic facilitation class. So now I can draw stick figures that do actually look sort of stick figure-ish, whereas before they weren't. So it's improved. I've maybe gone from sitting to crawling a little bit. And I'm deliberately and consciously exercising that muscle. Do I believe I'll ever get to the same level of competency as my wife? Probably not. But I can move towards that, and I can look at that as an inspirational goal and say, how can I constantly get better? And that's what we need in our organizations, and that's what we need in our individuals, in the people that make up our organizations, in order to really embrace the growth mindset that is key to agility. In the Business Agility Institute, my co-author Evan has come up with this model of what are the different areas where this growth mindset needs to be applied, where the agility has to become part and parcel of what we do. And there are at the center, now the very first version of this only had customer at the center, but sitting right in the middle is the customer. Our organizations need to become customer-centric. If you think of your organizational structure today, it's a hierarchy, it's a pyramid. Where is the customer in your org structure? Are they anywhere on that diagram? If you're lucky, they're down the bottom. The biggest and hardest shift is to move from having the customer as somebody who's on the outside to being the customer in the center of our business. Everything that we do is to serve the needs of a customer. And the organizations that have made that change are the ones that have got sustainable, profitable outcomes today. And the ones who still treat customers as they are outside, we know better, is the message, are the ones who are losing customer engagement. We could mention a few airlines. Then next comes the key stakeholders, our workforce, our partners, and our board. Governance matters. And the way we look at governance needs to change in order to allow the organization to become agile. The way that we deal with our workforce, with the people in the organization. The closer they are to the customer, the more empowered they need to be. We don't want 9 layers of permission to service a customer's need if there's a problem to be solved. We want to turn that around and say, the person who's closest to the customer is probably the one who knows the best what needs to be done. Treat them as a responsible adult, trust them, empower them, and enable them. And, oh, by the way, they need to be responsible corporate citizens and do tell us what's going on. And then our partners. Again, the message from the keynote this morning, the working with the ecosystem, not just our organization, but the whole ecosystem around us to provide that value to our customers. Co-opetition is a fancy new term that's been coined. Cooperative competition. Isn't that weird? But we see it in communities of practice. We see it in things like meetup groups at the operational level. People are sharing ideas. People are learning from each other. Well, how can we bring that sort of thinking into our weaving of that ecosystem around the organization? And then all of the other elements, leadership, operations, and at the individual level, things that we have to do to adopt an agile mindset. And this is a huge transformation. This is a huge change for many organizations, because we are truly disrupting the current ways of working. We're turning everything on its head. Now, the Domains of Business Agility document on the Business Agility Institute goes deep into each one of those, and I would encourage you to download that and have a look at it. There's some really interesting pointers as to what needs to be done in there. Can we? There we are. So, what do we need to do? First and foremost, deliver value rapidly and consistently. Easy to say, hard to do. Collaborate courageously. Step outside of the boundaries and the borders and look to the ecosystem around us. Iterate to learn. In the last talk, we heard about the importance of that iteration. Learning, getting feedback, changing, adapting. Simplify. How much of any business process is done when we distill it down? How much of it is waste and how much truly adds value? What can we do to simplify the work that we do? Adapt to realities, reflect on feedback, and adapt both our products and our process. If you're using an agile delivery model, then fundamentally that's built in with the retrospective approach. But for many teams, the retrospective doesn't result in concrete changes. But we know from the intent that that's what it's all about. We examine our product, and we get feedback on that, and we change and adapt it. But we also examine our process. We examine our ways of work, and we update that. We change that. And the people who do the work are the ones who are empowered to change the process. And by the way, best practice doesn't exist. There are many good practices. There is no one best. In the volatile world that we live in today, locking in a best practice becomes common mediocrity, because everybody does it the same as you do. So don't look for best. Look for right in your context, and look for the learning and what's next. And it starts with a focus, an absolutely fanatical focus on the quality of our products. We've heard the term MVP more than once, right? minimum viable product. Unfortunately, in the industry, this has been taken to very often to be minimum crappy product. Sloppy work pushed out the door. No. To be viable, a product needs to be high quality. It might be small, it might be a thin slice, but the work that is done to a high level of quality. If we go to the Agile Manifesto, which is the inspiration for a lot of the thinking, the technical excellence is the standard that is expected. So do not confuse minimum viable with poor quality. So what does it take for our organizations to become a digital business, to become the agile innovators that we need today? First and foremost, get to know your customers. Put the customer in the center. There are some innovative organizations who require that every 3 months, every single senior executive spends a day on the phones in the call center, taking calls and solving customer problems. Those execs know the pain their customers face. They have that laser-like line of sight. What are the things we can do to get close to our customers? Think of that ability to respond and adapt. Think about our processes. How can we change, how can we make them fluid? That process is like water. It fills the gaps that are needed and avoids the places where it shouldn't be. We heard this morning in the keynote about the importance of understanding the technologies. Know the potential of the technologies. What are the capabilities? And bring that agile analysis mindset. I would refer you to Frederic Laloux's work on reinventing organizations, talking about the ways organizations have changed over time. And a common misconception is that the teal, the outer layer, is somehow different to all of the others. One of the points that Laloux makes in his book that is often missed when people summarize it is that you need every one of those abilities within the organization. So we need to have, there are times when command and control leadership is necessary, but we also need to be able to adapt to true self-management and evolutionary purpose-driven organization. So it's not about an either-or, it's a container for all. But moving, and it is very true that moving towards green and teal in terms of organizational culture does result in better outcomes both for customers and for employees. There's a lot of good evidence to that. And that's something that we do want to think about. What are the changes we can make in our organizations to move towards that? But they build on a solid foundation of good management practices, for instance. We're not throwing the proverbial baby out with the bathwater. We're building on top of and adapting to the right context. Technology is giving me trouble. Stephen Deming. Is there man over there pushing a button, talks about 3 laws. The law of the customer. Put the customer in the center of your organization. The law of the small team. Small cross-functional teams achieve more than large bureaucratic silo-driven teams. If you need to scale, break the problem up into small pieces and group and give each piece to a small cross-functional team, you will get better outcomes than trying to put together a large number of people into a single team. And move away from hierarchies and bureaucracy into networks and evolutionary relationships. So at an organizational structure level, we go away from the silos and we start to think about value streams, where maybe it's product lines or service lines, where they've got all of the competencies that are needed to deliver value for customers. And there's no need to go outside of that stream to get permission to do anything. All of the competencies, all of the knowledge, all of the power sits within that single value stream, delivering value to a client. And I've seen teams that include marketing, legal, finance, HR, and product development. So that truly, if there is a question, the right person is right there. And the cycle time for decision making is minutes, not hours, days, or months. Henrik Knieberg talks about the importance of aligned autonomy. Now, this comes from the Spotify culture video that was released a number of years ago. And he says that our organizations typically have 2 dimensions, alignment, autonomy. At one level, you've got no alignment, no autonomy, and people are absolutely confused. We don't know why we're doing it, and nobody's telling us anything. We could have high alignment, but low autonomy. And this is the typical hierarchical organization. The boss knows best. So when there's a problem to be solved, we turn to the boss, we look to that person, and they tell us what to do. In this case, we need to cross the river, build a bridge. On the other hand, I have seen organizations where there is absolute total autonomy, but no alignment. And managers are sitting there absolutely terrified, what's going on? But people are having fun. But nobody's solving the river problem. The ideal is the clarity of outcome that the manager conveys from leadership is this is the why we need to do things. And then we trust the people who are doing the work to figure out the best way to do it. And that's what Knieberg talks about as aligned autonomy. This is the problem. We need to cross the river. You figure out how. From an employee engagement and from an organizational outcome perspective, we see that aligned autonomy results in better outcomes consistently. All right. That slide I'm trying to get to that is obviously doesn't want to be shown is talking about adapting the process, using the plan, do, check, act cycle, building it in and learning consistently. All of your processes need to be fluid, able to respond to the context, to the live environment, and to adapt and change. And we do that by empowering the people in the process to own the changes, to make the changes, to treat them like responsible adults. So for our organizations, there's a changed imperative. We move from top-down management to leadership and emerging at every level. The mantra of do more with less is wrong. Just do less. We know from the Pareto principle, 80% of value comes from 20% of the work that we do. We know from the Standish Group surveys looking at software products, 68% of the features are never used. Well, then don't build them. Just do less, but make sure that what we do is the right stuff. Solve the right problem. Empower people with minimum viable process rather than, as in many organizations, the process is the thing that matters. Tick the box. Move away from centralized annual planning and budgeting to real-time, emergent, adaptive budgeting and planning. And if you want to explore that one further, the Beyond Budgeting movement has got a whole lot of good information about how do we make those changes. Move away from planning based around milestones to rolling wave learning and adaptive plans. And, oh, please, 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 move away from project teams to product lines. Stable teams that remain together for long periods of time and are responsible for delivering value. There's a single outcome that makes a difference. That's the biggest one. So funding from the Business Agility Survey again, the things that are making a difference and that are predictors of success in business agility. The first one is the funding models, moving away from that annualized budgeting, top-down imposed budgeting process to an evolutionary, a learning and adapting, and a keep the bank open all year round is one of the terms that comes out of Beyond Budgeting. You're able to go back as we learn and adapt. The move to value streams away from that project thinking and the culture of relentless improvement. These are the things that successful organizations are bringing in, and they are the most significant predictors of success in the 21st century organization. So look for those in your organization. But what do we do? So we rethink. We respond at the speed of change, listen to the voice of the customer, empower and align people. Stop thinking about people as resources. A resource is something that is consumed in the production of a product. Yeah, and if that's what's happening in your organization, that's pretty horrible. The other one, people are our greatest asset. No, slavery was abolished. Assets can be sold. Move to outcomes. Start to think about value delivered rather than busyness. Timesheets measure busyness. They don't measure outcomes delivered. Think about innovation as a core competency for the organization. How do we make that key to our way of working? And the no projects, no estimates movement, moving away from trying to predict the unpredictable to constantly learning and adapting. So that's what it means for the organization. What does it mean for you? As an individual, there are things you have to do differently. First of all, become a lifelong learner. The ability to unlearn, learn, and relearn. Let go of what used to be the truth. What you know today will be false, maybe not tomorrow, but maybe next week, maybe in 6 months' time. That's okay. What we thought about business analysis 5 years ago has changed. I was one of the team that wrote Babok version 3. When we looked at the difference between version 2 and version 3, well, one, we made it a whole lot bigger. Sorry about that. But we also found many of the things that were true in version 2 were no longer true when we came with version 3. Did that move? No. Become passionately dissatisfied. If you are content with where you are at, then you are stagnating. As an individual, you need to be dissatisfied with your current state and look for how are you going to improve. What is the next step? What is the next version of you that you're going to bring to the market? What are the things you need to learn? What are the competencies you need to build? What are the muscles that you need to strengthen? The ones that you haven't tried yet. In my case, it's learning to draw at the moment. Who is your customer? Everybody in every role has at least one and often many different customers. Our job is to service those customers' needs. How do we become customer fanatical? How do we put them in the center of everything that we are doing? Because our purpose is to deliver value to our customers. How do I think like an innovator, like an entrepreneur? That it's okay to fail. Because when I fail, I learn something. But really important, make the blast radius, as Henrik Knieberg says, small. So that when that failure happens, it's not disruptive. It's a learning moment. And there will be the occasional big failure. Well, that's okay too. But be comfortable with that ability to constantly learn and adapt. And take the facts. Look for the truth. Even when they're hard. And we talk about 360-degree reviews. Well, yeah, ask people to give you honest feedback about how you're doing and learn from that. Experiment, innovate, and be comfortable with being uncomfortable. If you're comfortable in the place that you're at the moment, you are stagnating. So this is about individual transformation. I didn't put a butterfly here. This is building, rebuilding yourself block by block, piece by piece. And if you can't do it, your organization won't. The organization is the sum of the people in it. That mindset of growth is something that needs to start at the individual, wherever you are in the corporate hierarchy. Sit. This one I really do want to show. So what does VUCA become? Vision. Create the future. not volatility. Understanding, learn, feedback, hear, not uncertainty. Clarity, the tools of sense-making, not complexity. And agility, that ability to respond to change, not ambiguity. That's the VUCA we want in our organizations today, not the first one. All right. This thing is weird. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, that's that. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Hi, I'm Gaurav Jain. I'm working in Fidelity International. So I have two questions actually.
Sure.
So basically in Agile world, in Agile team, there are three roles: product owner, Scrum Master, and developers. So where do you think that developers, business analyst, in which role they will come? And should business analyst aspire to become product owner? And next question is regarding your hashtag no projects, no estimates. So, I mean, if we will not estimate at the start of the sprint, we basically ask developers to do the story pointing.
Can we tackle these one at a time?
Sure.
Okay, so the first thing, I would refer you to the very latest version of the Scrum Guide, where they've changed the language from developer to team. And the key message of Scrum about the team or the developers is that the team is a cross-functional group of people who have all of the skills needed to deliver value. If you are building software, then some of those skills will be about writing software, some will be testing, some will be UX, some will be business analysis, some will be maybe security, whatever the competencies are that are needed. So where does the business analyst fit? They are a member of the team, and analysis is a skill set, not a job. I may have the title of business analyst. I could be called all sorts of other things. It doesn't really matter. But the skill set I bring to the table is that ability to analyze, to break things apart into their constituent components for understanding, which is the definition of analysis. So if that's my role, that's the skill set I bring to the team, I'm a member of that team. I also, we heard this morning about T-shaped skills, I'm prepared to step outside of my narrow role and say, okay, the analysis work that I'm primarily responsible for is actually done at the moment. How else can I help? So one of the key elements of Scrum as a methodology, a framework, is that it has the daily stand-up, the daily Scrum meeting. Again, the latest version of the Scrum Guide doesn't say you have to use the three questions, or what have you done, what will you do, what's in your way. For me, the teams that are the most effective are the ones where one of the key questions they ask in the daily Scrum meeting is, what help do you need? How can I help you? So if I, in my analysis skill set, have completed the work that I have got in that skill set, and there's a tester who's burdened by some work to do, well, how can I help you? That's stepping out, and that's the T in there. So this is the concept of the team working together and responsible for delivering value. The second question you asked was, should business analysts aspire to be product owners? Potentially, yes, if that competency of product ownership is something that you are passionate about and aspire to. If it's not, no. If there's one thing I will say, business analyst to project manager is a bad idea. Because generally the competencies are contradictory.
But Generally in market, if you see, mostly BA aspire to become product owners. At least in our organization, people say that if you are BA and you have experience of, let's say, 8, 9, or 10 years, you will become the product owner of owner of that product. So generally it happens.
That's a potential. That is a reasonable pathway for in many organizations, but it's certainly not it's not a limiting thing. One of the things that we talk about today more and more is the concept of the career mosaic rather than a career ladder. So where are your passions? Follow your passion and find somebody to pay you for it. And the last one you asked about was no estimates. This is a slight contradiction in terms. No estimates doesn't mean don't estimate. It means be conscious of the level of uncertainty that you have around your estimates. It is better to be approximately right than precisely wrong. And most of our estimation processes today are about coming to precise numbers that are always wrong, rather than using an approximately right approach. And there are statistical tools like, and now the term's gone out of my head, Monte Carlo analysis, for instance, will give you a bell curve of probability for estimation. That is better than a single number estimate. Estimates should always have a range and a level of uncertainty associated with them. So the no estimates movement is not saying we don't estimate at all. It is saying we use estimates in the right way, at the right time, for the right level, and it is better to be approximately right than to be precisely wrong.
Okay, thank you.
Hi Shane, I'm Punita from Accenture. I had one question regarding the, so when we talk about hyper-personalizations and customizations and when softwares go from version 1, 2, and 3, you did mention that version 3 could be bigger, but it doesn't have a lot of components that version 2 had. Now, what about the minorities of people who probably liked something in version 2? Now, won't they be disappointed that it's not there in version 3, and how do you handle that?
One of the questions there, it has to be a business-based decision, is the cost of maintaining those pieces worth the value we get from the customers that use them? If this is a small, if this is a component that there's a small proportion of the customer base that uses it, but they're people who either pay us a lot of money or have a lot of influence, then it's worth maintaining it. On the other hand, if you look at the studies, and if you put the analytics into your product, you will find that there are large chunks of your product that are not used by the few small proportion. Nobody has ever used them. Those are the things we just shouldn't be building. They more often, this products get feature bloat because we get ideas not from customers, but from surrogates. Marketers are great surrogates. They come up with all sorts of ideas. If we had this, the market would buy it. If we had that, the market would buy it. If you actually then put the analytics into the product and you measure it, you'll almost always find if the request didn't come from a customer, it was a great idea that nobody uses. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Sudhir and I come from a startup company. One question I had was that each individual has a different rate at which they're willing to adapt.
Yep.
So if it all starts with the individual, how can the organization change as a whole, since the rate is so variable?
It is, and this is where sometimes it's about getting the right people on the bus. And also it's about being an inspiration. If you're in a startup organization, you've got more opportunity to be close to people, to be that inspiration for change and movement. It's harder with larger organizations, I will confess. But the Jim Collins' Good to Great does talk very much about get the right people on the bus. And sometimes that means that the wrong people have to leave.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions, folks? One more question up front here.
Just one quick question there.
So basically, if you see nowadays in market, if you go into any company, they will say they are following agile model. But in reality, they are not agile. So as per you, what are the key things which are not making them agile?
And there's a whole lot of conversation out there about the difference between doing and being. If you adopt any of the agile practices, some of them will give you process improvements and will give you better outcomes. Like if you build software, if you implement test-driven development tomorrow, you will get lower defect rates. Guaranteed. If you implement pair programming tomorrow, you will get higher programmer productivity. Guaranteed. Those are things that you can, those are two practices that you can bring in. You will guarantee you will get some improvement. What you will not get with either of just those practices is the agile mindset, the philosophy of learning, adapting, responding, and building the right product. More and more we see organizations who are very, very efficiently building the wrong product. They've got the practices down great, but that ability to flex and learn is not there, and that's the mindset. And that's the difference between the doing and the being. You need both. It's no good to have the mindset of agility, but we won't bother with any of the technical practices because they're hard. No, we bring, so early on in my talk I said that focus on technical excellence. What we build is built to a really high standard, and the technical practices are in there to help us do that. But the philosophy means that we're also comfortable, if we discover that what we've built is wrong, we discard it and we move on. We don't fall for the sunk cost fallacy and various others. And I think now we're out of time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, sir.